Well, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today. I figured we can just jump into some of those questions and, pick your brain and you can give us as much
Perfect.
insight as you can.
Yeah, my name's Isabella. I have grown up in London, that's where I'm from. And then I went to a couple of performing arts schools in the UK and went to the Royal Ballet School, the lower school until I was 15. And then the really important part of my training happened after that, really, when I went to the Vaganova, which is where basically like my life changed and everything I'm doing now sort of revolves around that whole experience. Um, yeah, and so that was, and then I worked in Russia as well, in various ballet companies, and now I'm back in the UK working on my business here.
Awesome. Can you share two highlights from when you were at the academy?
I guess one of the major highlights that I've spoken about before is mainly just like when I was finally picked to go on the center of the center bar in Vaganova. It's like that very sort of prestigious place, that you kind of dream to be at. So that was a real highlight. And I think another highlight was just being on the Mariinsky stage and performing on it, just because of, especially towards the end of my school time when it was, you're given solos and you're given paradas and you're allowed to, well, you're given the opportunity to dance alone on that stage, and it's just so vast and big, and you just feel the weight of the history when you're on there, and how many people, you can't help but think how many people were on that stage before you.
Absolutely. And such a incredible connection. I think that a lot of dancers sometimes can, hyper focus on just their physical nature of dancing. To hear you explain that even when you get to the performance, it happens to be so much more than that in just regard of, you know, being in this theater that holds so much prominence and history for dance.
Yeah,
It's truly incredible.
yeah, it's just a real experience, and it's hard, especially when you're performing there maybe just a few times, because like in the initial few times you're soaking up already so much, like how it smells, even how it smells, the sound of your shoes on the stage, like, it's very overwhelming. And I think you really need to be performing on that stage for, night after night, or be in the company to really kind of get over that first initial amazement, and then, yeah, make it your home.
Absolutely. What about two
Yeah,
challenges?
there was a challenge as well, being in the center. I think that came with huge pressure to deliver and to do that well. And on the other side of things, I've got to put in there in the list of challenges, like injury, because I went through,
Mm,
you know, in my most important year of my life, I went through the most disastrous injury, like hurting my I fractured my back, and so I had to have like 6 7 months off. I definitely needed much longer than 6 months off, but I had to get back because it was my graduation year. So I had to get back as quickly as I possibly could. So rehabbing that quick from like a serious injury, and rehabbing to my best capabilities, and being able to go back without seemingly have lost anything was really, really difficult. And to be able to go through all that and then go back to that spot on the center and still deserve to be there, that was like a huge challenge for me. Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's an incredibly large challenge for sure. How did that, feel from a mindset perspective? I would imagine, of course, the physicality of it and, you know, recovering from an injury while still getting back to dancing. And what about from a mindset perspective? That must have been very challenging.
The thing that really kept me going was I built a very strategic routine for myself at home with the rehab. And so it was a very strict routine, because I basically tried to replicate the amount of hours that my peers were doing in school. But obviously I wasn't doing, going back mounds and back bends and everything, but I was trying to replicate the amount of load in a way that was sustainable for me at the time. Um, and the only thing that kept me going, the only thing was like, I've got to make it for that graduation and that exam. Like, that was the only thing that kept me going. But I was quite, looking back, like the amount of sheer grit I must have had, and like discipline and determination to get through that, because I was alone for like hours in the day just doing my exercises. um that takes a lot that takes a lot of mental strength, I think.
I would imagine, as you said, your time at the academy set a very strong stage for what you do now as a teacher. And I want to talk about your transition into teaching. But at that, just coming off of what you just said, being where you are now, what advice would you have given yourself during that time, if that makes any sense? Because it sounds like you were super motivated by that that end of the year graduation, and it really helped to move you through. Is there anything now that you would have either changed or would have liked to have the reminder from perhaps someone of yourself?
I think we all just at that age just need reassurance that everything's going to be fine, because I think we're just like at that age, just everything's very heightened in our emotions and everything's very overwhelming. So it feels like this is it. This is the only thing that matters, and it becomes your complete world, which is normal, like it's natural for that to happen. But I think I never let myself really enjoy, it was really terrible actually. I never really enjoyed time like with my parents or time like out with them and stuff like that, because I would just be so worried about not doing enough of something, or missing out on time I could be working on something. It's like, no, I've got to be working 24/7. And that's not sustainable, and I think part of why I do my podcast as well is to sort of help younger dancers realize that, because I do think that to some degree that's also why I don't do that anymore. It's why I don't do that, because I had that way of thinking in my head that completely burned me out. And so, yeah. And so I don't want other people going through that, because it's like the way for this to be sustainable is to have, balance and balance in your life. And we're so susceptible to not having that. And so it drives people into the ground.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I cannot tell you how much I relate. There's this really interesting realization that I've had just in my last 10 years working as a dietitian for dancers. And it's, there are parts of me that are very interestingly thankful for the experiences that I had and the struggle that I had in my relationship with food, because it set the stage for all the work that I do now. I don't know if I would have built, my business to where it is now if I had not experienced the detriment to my dancing, right, with food. But I also want dancers to realize that, let us, having dealt with that, and now we're here to make sure that you don't have to experience the burnout that we experienced, because it sounds like it was very similar for both of us in regards to that, having that mindset, because I was like that too. And I still have instances of that as well with my business. I'm sure you can relate. I always say, you can take the girl away from perfection, or I should say you can take the dancer away from perfectionism. You can't really take the perfectionism away from the dancer, but I call myself a recovering perfectionist, and I think it's just really important for dancers to understand that clinicians like myself, professionals like yourself, are here to help dancers not experience the burnout so they can flourish.
A lot of the dancers will look at you and me, and obviously they see like me in the Veganova videos and see like, the high level I'm dancing at, and they can think to themselves, yeah, but you're that high level because you were kind of crazy, like because you worked non-stop, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that's also why I'm not doing it now, because my relationship with it wasn't healthy long term. And it's like I couldn't imagine it, because I very much lived like a very, very intense existence for that amount of time. And I learned so much from that intensity, which is what I'm sharing now. But also I'm sharing, let's make this sustainable for you so that you can have a long career.
Absolutely. You bring up such a good point, right? The dancers who see those videos who say, okay, well, you know, somehow you got there with that personality, with that mindset. But I love that you're bringing attention to the fact that dancers can get there, but then
Yeah.
we can sustain it, right? And that's what you're helping them do. You're helping them build longevity into their dancing. And that's everything you do now, which really shifts me into my next
Mm.
conversation. At what point did you make this shift
Yeah,
into?
relatively accidental. I was in London, and I'd come back from Russia at this point, and I was just taking class a lot myself in the local studios and drop-in classes, and then several students would see me dancing, and then afterwards just be like, "Oh, do you coach at all? Do you do any coaching?" And I at the time I thought, "Oh, I don't know, but okay, yeah, let's let's pass on this knowledge, sure." And then I started coaching, and just really really enjoyed how um, I could help somebody, and I realized quite early on that I have an ability to relay things in a very understandable and approachable way, which was really great. But I was already, as I was coaching people, I was already so passionate about how I wanted them to be, very much on a level with me, not me and then them. And then also how I wanted them to feel, grown up and mature and think about what they were doing and think about their corrections. And also just in to be able, I wanted them to be able to enjoy it as well, like enjoy the process of even making a mistake and things like that. So, because these were all things that I struggled with myself. And then, because by this point I was in London because I'd left Russia, and I lost a bit of love for my ballet life, and the ballet in general. I'd lost a bit of love for it, and it was while I was taking class again, I'd already slightly brought it back a little bit because I really stayed away from the studios for like months, and then I
Mhm.
found when I was teaching people, it was quite a cathartic process for me because I was able to really find the joy through them, because I was almost seeing myself in them. It sounds strange, but that's what really sparked it for me. But it only really took off, and I only really dedicated myself to it wholeheartedly when the lockdown happened, and we were locked inside, had nothing to do, and so I just went gung ho on the teaching, and then yeah, got my ideas for my business and went away with that.
Yeah, and I am so in support of everything you do. I love, you said it best, the way that you articulate to dancers, making mistakes enjoyable. So many dancers with that type A perfectionist mindset. I know I experienced this myself, just the overwhelming self ridicule with a mistake, not realizing that mistakes are our
Yeah.
opportunities to really move forward and to, pick them apart and work on them more. And I love everything that you're doing. Can you please share a bit more about how you, and this is going off in a little bit of a tangent, but I watched one of your videos recently
Yeah.
about it, and you talk a lot about artistry. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how dancers can uh, focus focus more on artistry, because I don't know if you feel this way, but it can sometimes with social media, dancers often, like I mentioned earlier, just really focus on the physicality and on technique. And I think a lot with artistry can get
Yeah,
lost.
I mean, but for me, like when I was growing up, and the thing that made me start ballet was actually music. So, you know, even just like putting headphones in and listening to, no, I mean, everyone's different, but for me, I could put in headphones and just listen to classical music. And I would just imagine movement. I wouldn't imagine tricks. I'd imagine like me expressing myself with ballet steps, like through movement, because it would make me feel something. And I think you need to find something that really does make you feel something. And sometimes that's just life in general. That's just going out and looking up at the sky and seeing the birds move. I mean, we're like this all the time. And it's just like, so even in the morning, I try to look up every morning. I go outside with my coffee and I look up, and I just feel instantly like I notice how my mood changes. I feel happier, I feel calmer. And I think we all need to find something that allows for that, the emotions to naturally come up. Because if we're, constantly technique, 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 I imagine we feel, very flat and very dulled because we're only focused on one area of it. And, ballet's not just I mean, it is like a sport per se, but it's not just a sport, and it's not even an artistic sport, because that even gymnastics is not as artistic as this. This is something else. This is an art form, and emphasis on the word art. So I think, yeah, we need a bit more life experience in general. And that goes back to the whole balance point, because without balance in your life, you won't be able to really hone that side of things. Like, it's very drilled in Russia for them to read. They read a lot of literature. They go to the theatre to see dramas. They go to the museums. They even go on walk down the river and look at the view. Like, they're very, very cultural, and I think that really translates through their dancing. You can see they're so emotional. And I think that's something that young people really, really need to think about.
Yes, absolutely. And be proactive about, building that into their lives, because I know here in the US, uh, I'm thinking right now at the forefront of my mind is summer intensive season. And for a lot of dancers here, the summer intensives are very intense, really from a technicality standpoint. I remember my days with summer intensives. We had access to discounted tickets and we would see performances here and there, but it really wasn't emphasized as much as I think it should have been, just as your suggestion, because that is that balance part that so many dancers, younger dancers, really fall short on. It's really the reason why I love having these conversations, because I just want, if there's anything I want younger dancers to walk away from any of these conversations with, it's the fact that building balance into their lives helps on the stage, right? It helps with performance. It doesn't take away.
In a very blunt way, my teacher, she she said in class, because I was very like this, focus, 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 only stretching matters. and, and she'd be like, so do you have a boyfriend? And I'd be like, no. She'd be like, why I want you to go out and have fun and go in the city with your boyfriend. And I was like, no time for boyfriend. But I was like, I know now, and also I didn't understand her at all. I was like, what are you talking about? You'll shout at me tomorrow for not landing in a clean fifth. But then, but now, obviously, I get what she's saying, because it's like, what she was basically saying was you need to have balance in your life. And the girls who were in my class, who were much more down to earth, much more chill, they had boyfriends, they went out, they had a weekend, they, if they fell, they didn't care, kind of thing. They're going off and doing fantastic things in the ballet world now, because there was always that measurable balance. It was always still, it's work and it's very much your life, but it's still like a job, like it's separate, like you have a life as well.
Absolutely. And first of all, I think it goes without saying that you are doing fantastic things in the ballet world right now, because you are helping so many dancers to build, the biggest word here is sustainable. Yeah. Thank you. But in regards to injury, not just fine-tuning technique, but just how it all plays into injury prevention in of itself.
It's awful. It's really awful getting injured, and it's something that I don't wish on anyone. I really admire dancers who've like gone through that, especially a really serious one. Like, I can't not think about like Stephen McRae from the Royal Ballet, who's had just, oh gosh, I don't know how many now. Like, he's made of steel, that man. Like, in mental strength. But I never, if I was to go back and go to Vaganova and actually have the exact same experience again, which was very much bumpy, I think I would, because it was like, I'd like to challenge myself again with that test, but I think you learn something hugely from injury, and I don't think I'd be able to share as much as I can now, if it was just completely smooth.
Absolutely. And it goes back to just that idea that we learn from our experiences, we learn from our challenges and our mistakes, whether no matter how small or how great they are, they're opportunities for us. How would you define, this is an overarching question and you've essentially defined it throughout our entire discussion today, but how would you very succinctly define what it means to be the healthy dancer?
Yeah, I think it's someone who is aware aware of their emotions, someone who can keep a level head and keep things separate in their minds. Like, a mistake in your dancing is not a personal attack on you. Like, it's very much, that's just something I need to work on. And I think realizing that will keep you very much healthy in your head, because how you do in your ballet class has nothing to do with you as a person. And I think that's something that we all need to realize when we're, you know, training in this field, because it can feel extremely personal. And being able to separate your life from your ballet, and then you go home and you have a separate life completely, I think that will lead to a long lasting career. Be addicted as well to personal self growth, because I think the more you can learn about yourself and how you're feeling and how to respond to situations, the better you'll be able to handle situations. And I've grown, I've grown
Absolutely.
so much since my podcast, actually, because I have to learn more myself to be able to translate it to other people. And so that's something that's massively helped me. That wasn't super succinct, but hopefully, hopefully.
You have shared so much incredible insight with us today. I know I said it before, but dancers really are so lucky to have your resources, which really just brings me to the final question, which is, where is the best place for dancers to find you?
I chatted a bit about my podcast, which you can find on Spotify. It's got thousands of dancers on there now. It's called A Dancer's Mindset, and lots of non-dancers listen to that as well. I think it's very compatible with any sort of high achieving field. It's all relative. As well as you can find my website, balletwithisabella.com, where I give a ton of content, classes, and in-depth courses to help you with all your limitations in your technique, be it turnout, pirouettes, extensions, jumps, all these kinds of things. And so with these two things, I'm just so passionate about not only helping people technically and physically and getting stronger and more flexible, all things that limited me at one point in my life, to then very much focusing on the mindset side of things, because I do feel like you can't, like, they have to be together. You can't have one, not the other. And so, yeah, that along with your nutrition, it all just makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be connecting with you. I think that, we are obviously serving dancers, as we mentioned earlier, to really just help with performance potential and performance longevity, but even not just only performance, really, as you mentioned, life in general. Non-dancers listen to your podcast because it is all relatable. It's just like the work I do in regards to healing our relationships with food.
Really just want to shake self when I was younger. It's have a life, go outside and actually, like, full stop, and just enjoy your life, because it goes in a flash. And you will be a better dancer if you have more experiences in your life, good and bad. And so, yeah, we have to take that to heart, because you can't just be in the studio 24/7 and expect to be a sustainable have a sustainable career and also be an artist. What are you learning in the studio that goes that deep?
Isabella, thank you so much for all of this. It's been such a pleasure having you on here.
Bye.